Another Edmonton Elks game and another way for the Edmonton Elks to lose. This is the Green and Gold postgame show live right here on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Tune in iHeartRadio as well as those watching on YouTube. Iwanyk and Jay Milne with you here as the Elks. They lose their fifth game of the season, drop to 0-5 as they fall 37-34 to the Ottawa Redblacks. Another game that comes down to the wire. Another game the Elks lose on a field goal, and there's lots to get to on the show tonight. Lots to discuss. Your thoughts are going to be welcome. 780-218-9999. That is the Parish Jewelers inbox. Or you could jump into the Nasty Chat, sorry, Jay, on YouTube. We will get to stats. We'll get to our 3 reasons the Edmonton Elks lost. But before we get any further, Jay, I'll bring you into the show and your thoughts on the game that we witnessed down at Commonwealth Stadium.
I'm just disgusted. This is gross. This team is incredibly talented at finding new ways to lose.
Brand new way. Brand
Holy
new way.
Smokes. I mean, I don't know what can really be said other than that this team does not know how, or maybe know how is the wrong word. This team cannot gut out a win. They're not capable of it. I don't know how or why or what. I mean, obviously we'll go through key points in the game here, but, you know. God.
You're at a loss for words right now. You're at a loss for words right now.
I am. I mean, look, they did what they had to do. They came back. They drove the field. They scored a game-tying touchdown. And then an absolute brain-dead, stupid, you should be kicked out of the locker room. Your stall should be empty, Boris Beattie. Play. Kicking it out of bounds in the CFL with 8 seconds left. Are you brain-dead? Have you ever played football? This is absurd. His locker room, I hope his locker was cleared out before he even got his sorry ass off the field. That is embarrassing. You call yourself a professional? God, you have one job, and you didn't do it at all well during the game. And you got one job for kickoff. Keep it between the 2 stripes. And you can't even do that.
Boris Beattie will be, we will get to our 3 reasons the Elks lost in a bit. He's going to probably be number 1 on the list.
Yeah,
because it's not even just that play. He missed the short field goal to tie the game right at the start of the 4th quarter. A nice little short kick to make it equal, but instead he misses that field goal. And Boris Beattie had the big miss. That was week 1 against Saskatchewan, I believe it was.
Yes.
The 48-yarder. He couldn't make that. He was brought in, and look, I felt that the team needed to make a kicking change. I didn't think Dean Faithful was strong enough. And Boris Beattie, I had a little bit concerns, but he was coming off a great year last year. You go out there, get this guy as your prize for agent, and you might as well just stick with Dean Faithful. You might as well just go back to Dean Faithful because he was brought in to make those clutch kicks, to make the clutch plays. And today the kicker really dropped the ball mightily in this one. In the 2 plays that the play that you've mentioned, the one I've mentioned. You know, we saw Chris Jones, the replay on TSN right away as he saw that ball go to bounds, and he just shaking his head. Like, how do you let that happen as you're a kicker? I've never kicked in the CFL. I've never clicked in the NFL. I think that's the number 1 thing, though, as you're going out to the kick there is this has got to stay in play. That's the goal here, is to keep it in play. If anything, you're maybe even trying to just get that rouge at worst case, but, you just got to keep it in play, and you're going to overtime. Because I don't think Ottawa's trying anything if it's deep.
But they
were in a great spot. So and then this is where the defense, you just give up a massive play on the next play, and it sets it up where Chris Jones knew his headset was off, and the Edmonton Elks lose this football game. A completely brand new way to lose football game. In fact, we had one gentleman who was here. We were talking to him throughout the 4th quarter and talking about the issues of the team, and he asked beforehand, he's like, overtime, you each get a possession. Yeah. Yes. And he goes somewhere, he comes back, and he watches the game-winning kick. He's like, I thought the Elks get a possession. We're like, no. This didn't go to
overtime, bud.
Don't worry, dude. It didn't go to overtime. They just found a brand new way to lose this. Lucas in a Redford Ranger. Beatty misses 31-yarder clean, and then the kickoff. Tough to hang that one on Jones. 31-yard miss. The Redblacks TD right after that as well. Forgot about that part. There's a lot to get to. We've got a lot of text coming in to the Parish Jewelers inbox, 780-218-9999. We also got a lot of comments coming in to the Nasty Chat. Although I will say this to Lucas in the Redford Ranger. Thanks for hosting me yesterday, by the way. And also thank you for hosting me yesterday, by the way. The thing about Chris Jones, it's done. It's over. Like, this game, it doesn't strictly come down to two plays, but clearly there is something wrong with this organization. Clearly, Chris Jones cannot go out there and build a football team with players that know how to win. This is now year 3 of Chris Jones. Year 1, I will give that full break, but this is now year 3. Last year was a disaster, and this year this team is 0-5. And there are no more excuses anymore when it comes to this franchise. The first 4 losses, we could sit there and say statistically they're a better football team. We could sit there and say the eye test says they are better. The Ottawa Redblacks aren't, and they also lost to 4 great teams. The Ottawa Redblacks are not one of the top teams of the Canadian Football League. They are not a team that we're going to put at the very class and think, this is a team that's going to go win the Grey Cup this season. This was a game at home where you should be able to get it done. You should be able to go get the victory. And yet again, the Edmonton Elks find a way to lose. And that now eventually has to fall on someone. That now eventually has to fall on the responsibility of someone who will have to pay this price. And it's not just the kicker, Boris Beatty. And to me, Chris Jones can't get this done. He's not a strong general manager, it seems, at least in this tenure with the Edmonton Elks. And because the general manager of the Edmonton Elks, Chris Jones, is failing at his job, the head coach, Chris Jones, might be failing in his job because he doesn't have the players to coach. And in the end, I don't know how this organization can continue on with Chris Jones as their president, as their GM, as their head coach. Because, look, they could go beat Ottawa next week. They could go beat Hamilton after that. But you're a 2-5 football team at that point. Like, to get to 500 this season, they could afford how many more losses the rest of the way? 4. They have to go 9-4 the rest of this season to be a 500 football team. I don't know why anyone would have confidence that they're going to be able to go do that. So, like, to me, I said it going into this week. I've said it actually after the Toronto game. This was going to be the show-me game. Chris Jones cannot survive with this franchise if they lose to Ottawa. And here we are. They lost to Ottawa, and they're 0-5, and they're starting the season without a win this many games in yet again.
Yeah, there has to be a change because this is just now – this is problematic. This is not bad luck anymore. This is just who they are. So – as far as where the change is or what the change is, Chris Jones has got to get off the sideline immediately. Like, they cannot – this needs to happen, like, today or tomorrow.
The one issue for this is they play on Friday.
Who cares?
It is a very short week coming up here.
Who cares?
They have to fly out to Ottawa. And, well, that's the thing. You can't be worse.
No.
It's
literally can't.
But we're back to this. Last year was 0-9. This year we're at 0-5. And you did it at home again. Now it's what? It was 2-19, I think, is his record at home in this second stint with the Edmonton Elks. From a business perspective, you can't even sell this to get people to come back when Hamilton comes to town in 2 weeks. Not sexy again.
Yeah.
You're going to say something there?
I was. I wasn't even going to say, like, Jones, okay, I get it. But a lot of this has to fall as well on Jarius Jackson as the offensive coordinator.
A terrible OC right now this season.
Right now, currently, he is dropping the ball. Kevin Brown came out to a hot start as the running back. I believe he had 22 yards on 4 carries, or 29 yards on 4 carries, all in the first 5 minutes of the game. They were dominating with the run game. Where the hell did it go? Where did it go? And why? Why did that have to happen? How many times did they rush the ball? They rushed the ball. I'm not going to include Drew Prukop or McLeod Bethel-Toppin. They rushed the ball 13 times.
What is with the QB design draw or whatever that was at the end of the game?
I'm not even going to. I don't even think we're going to get to that debacle because there's so many other debacles to discuss. They ran the ball 13 times. 13 times. And the average was not bad. What are you doing, Jarius Jackson? Run the ball, especially when it's working. Like, you have to do that. You just can't have a successful offense if you're not going to be committing to running the ball. It's just not going to happen. He needs to wear a lot of this too. But, I mean, yeah, like.
6 rushes for Kevin Brown at the end of the first half.
Yeah.
At the end of the first half. And so he ends this game, though, with 8.
8. Not
It was going well. It was working. And what they chose to do was go away from something that was working. And I'll actually go beyond that now, even the passing attack, though. How many short passes did we see today? How many passes did we see where they need 10 and they're throwing 5? They're not extending it at all. They're not trying to stretch the field in any way, shape, or form.
I have a note right here. 2:20 left in the quarter 3. Needed 8 yards. They threw a 4-yard incompletion. That wasn't going anywhere anyhow. Like, it just is, I don't know. It's blowing my mind how some of these people call themselves professionals. This is a disgrace.
Well, and it was nice to see at the end, finally, where Eugene Lewis was getting the ball. He was getting the targets. McLeod Bethel-Thompson has not been targeting Eugene Lewis for the most part of this season. And finally, he threw a ball in tight coverage, and Eugene Lewis made a spectacular catch. And then we saw the ball get thrown to Eugene Lewis quite a bit. That's the beauty about Eugene Lewis is you could put the ball in a spot where he's covered, and there's a really good chance he's still going to come down with it. And that's what almost sparked the Elks offense at the end of this game. And I don't know if that's just MBT not looking for him or they were not designed plays to really look at Eugene Lewis. But when they finally started going towards Eugene Lewis, they were able to move the ball and have some success. And it's taken way too long in this season for them to utilize Eugene Lewis. And offensively, I will say this because there's a lot more to get to. They had like 4 good drives, I say, today. They had, at the beginning of the game, 2 back-to-back touchdown drives. And then at the end of the game, they had 2 back-to-back touchdown drives. But in between, the offense wasn't that good today.
No.
And
hey, this is a game where all 3 facets stunk. Defense, the cornerbacks for the Elks.
Gray gets beat on the crossing route, gone to the house. Pimpleton, 70-yard touchdown where they also get the 2 points afterwards.
It's just like, I don't know.
Hardy with the big catch that was ruled a touchdown.
Yeah, and that was on Lewis.
Gets
the other
destroyed.
corner.
Yep.
He lost him on a crosser. Like, it's just not good enough. There needs to be some changes here because the people that are here are not doing the job.
Well, and that's where it's there are no more excuses. You're an 0-5 football team. This is where you are. And I will now have to go like with McLeod Bethel-Thompson too. How is he not able to will this team to a victory? How is he not? He was brought in to be a winner, and he's not getting it done. Drew Brown beat him today. Drew Brown was 26 of 38 for 480 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. McLeod Bethel-Thompson was 26 of 35 for 272 yards. So they threw almost the exact same amount of attempts. 2 touchdowns, no picks. And the Drew Brown pick was awful, by the way. But almost over 200 yards more passing for Drew Brown in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of those are just those where they're lost in coverage 2 times tonight. Long plays, probably about 120 yards in offense, was off of 2 plays where the defenders got lost in the shuffle, and boom, you're gone. Like this team, that defense, okay? Like we said, okay, Jason Shivers, he's going to be the guy to come in and save the day and be Chris Jones' replacement, yada, yada, yada. Know what you got, Jason Shivers, in your cornerbacks. Do not put them in man coverage, or at least do it very, very rarely, because they cannot do the job. Those are zone cornerbacks. And it's just, yeah, I mean, you want to look at like Chris Jones and say, okay, he's the guy that brought in MBT. Is MBT the reason they lost today?
He's not the reason they lost today, but at the same
time. But he's also not the reason that he's also at blame for them not winning, too.
Well, that's at some point, I want to be able to say the reason they won today is because of McLeod Bethel-Thompson.
Well, that drive at the end of the game, where it came down. Yes, that was clearly pass interference. Yeah, that was a strong drive. There's no question. You cannot say that was.
But where's that consistency from him for the entire 60?
It's not there. That's the problem. It's not there. So if you're going to lose games like this anyways, put Trey Ford in. Honestly. Who cares? At this point, money aside, Chris Jones bringing in MBT, Chris Jones bringing in the worst kicking player I've ever seen in my life in Boris Beatty. Those are his guys. He brought both of them in. He's gone.
Well, actually, another guy he brought in is Javon Leake.
Oh, yeah.
Javon Leake had the fumble that led to the Ottawa touchdown that made it 15-13 at halftime. Javon Leake has struggled with protecting the ball all season for the most part. For the last couple games, he was okay, but for the first few fumbles, preseason fumbles today, fumbled yet again.
Yeah.
And we thought him and Boris Beatty were coming in, and they were going to solve this special teams for the Edmonton Elks. And it's gone almost the worst. They've gone the backwards. They've actually gotten worse with this as a special teams. Outside of, actually, I will give them full credit. The actual return game for the Elks is there. But Javon Leake is hurting this team offensively, and Boris Beatty's hurting this team with his kicks. And MBT has not done what he has been supposed to do, and that's will this team to a victory. Curly Gittins has done his job. I will give him that.
And you're right. MBT, while, has he played like complete ass? No. But he's not leading them to winning games with... As a quarterback, that's kind of should come with the territory. And Zulu says in the chat, and it's right, MBT is 0-5. We have two other quarterbacks. Play the other guy.
Would you like the stats of Chris Jones with this team?
I would love them.
Since 2022, which is his second stint with this team, this is the 41st game under Chris Jones. Yeah, Shakira's got the Copa America, which I also realized that was in Miami when she did the halftime show with J-Lo. But Shakira is going on in this Copa America, which is a disaster, by the way. Well, that's something I'll get on to the hangout tomorrow. Chris Jones has 8 wins in 41 games with the Edmonton Elks since 2022. 0 wins with Nick Arbuckle, Jared Daggy, and McLeod Bethel Thompson as his starting quarterback. 3 with Taylor Cornelius as his starting quarterback. 5 with Trey Ford. I don't want a I told you so at this point, but I get to do a little bit of an I told you so. This is why I wanted Trey Ford to start this season as the starting quarterback for the Edmonton Elks. Because if they were 0-5 with Trey Ford and Trey Ford was playing poor through these first 5 games, I could sit here and say, you want to know something? Trey Ford's not a starting quarterback in the Canadian Football League. But at least we saw whether he could or couldn't do it. MBT, I didn't think this was a guy that was coming in that, to me, he was a better quarterback than Trey Ford, but not so much so that elevated this team to such a level that we would be talking about a 4-1, a 5-0 football team. And now I feel like if you ever go to Trey Ford, there's way too much pressure because everyone now wants to see him in a bigger way. And we heard the "We Want Trey Ford" chants again today. This is all taking, going the way outside of how some of the results were. How I thought this season was going to play out. That the MBT's not a guy that's actually going to carry to victories. If you get worst case scenario, you don't win football games, what you do is you're going to need a quarterback next year because MBT's not the guy and Trey Ford's going to walk. And I would have rather, at least if Trey Ford's going to walk, it's seen what he can do. And we don't know what he can do. And I'd rather, if I'm watching an 0-5 football team, at least be excited by a guy running around trying to make a play.
Do you think Chris Jones gets fired? I honestly don't know how he can't.
The reason I say he can't is because they play on Friday.
So
it's such a quick turnaround for this team to go out and do you elevate Jason Shivers? What do you go with that way? What's the situation with ownership and where they are with this? I'm just going to look at what they play after. So they're Ottawa Friday, then it's Sunday against home to Hamilton. If I'm Rick Lawlisher. And he did this with Danny Machocha as a general manager. After a win, he fired Danny Machocha. If I'm Rick Lawlisher, I think at this moment, I'm firing him on Saturday, no matter the outcome on Friday.
Oh, you're doing a Jay Woodcroft firing.
I'm done. Yeah. I'm talking to the board tonight, or I probably would have already talked to people, but I'm talking to the board. I'm talking to the prospective new owners, whether it's one or multiple still. I'm talking to them, and I'm saying this has got this. For us to sell tickets the rest of the season, I have to go make this move. This isn't about anything else, but we need to give the fans something because 0-5 is unacceptable yet again. And, I don't care if they split against Ottawa. Cool. You blew another one, and you're 1-5 at that point. but you give that next coach time between Friday, July 19th and Sunday, July 28th to take over and figure out how you're going to, because it's also, if you get rid of Chris Jones, there's a GM position that also you have to deal with. So it's that G-Roy that takes over as an interim. And there's just a lot of moving parts because Chris Jones ultimately has so many hats. And I think to do this in advance of Friday, I think is a little quick. So now the question, though, you asked not was what would I do? Do I think it will happen? I would say 75% no, 25% yes. I'm prepared to go to work tomorrow knowing we might have to be prepared for a press conference. Because at what point does Rick Lawlisher have to just stop this? Have to just say it's 0-5, like what's that number for him to where he has to go, enough's enough. A change has to be made. And I honestly don't know what that number would have to be. But if we're not there yet, I don't think there's many more. This is the Green and Gold post-game show live at Century Casino Sports Bar and Lounge, where every day is game day. Matt Iwanyk, Jay Milne with you here. Elks fall 37-34. I want to rattle off a bunch of the nasty chat and Paris Jeweler inbox text because we're getting a lot right now.
It's hot. It's hot in there.
Dazzler, pathetic, blow it up. Shoggy, Insane Albert. Elks passing D stinks. Special teams brain freeze. On the plus side, Elks did not lose last week. 0-5 season start again. Losing in their DNA. Once again, Elks find new and innovative ways to grab a loss from the jaws of victory. When I think of Elks, worst franchise in CFL history. Elks are... I'm not going to go there. Matt, have you seen enough? Jay, are you going to make excuses and say they were so close? Once again, Chris Jones needs to be fired. Well, we got that text right at the start of it. So, Tube Socks, they left too much time on the clock for Ottawa to work with. And I think I made a comment.
Dude, you did.
Yeah.
You're like, well, you're such a mush. Like, I said, hey, they took time off the clock going for it 3 times from the 1 yard line. And then, like, I think somebody said something. Yeah, it's like it's only 8 seconds.
Well, I also said that like they took time off the clock, not on purpose. It's because they couldn't get it in the end zone. They struggled once again with short yardage. Coach Mike, I thought they were done with finding new ways to lose. Elks keep saying, hold my beer. Stamp hater, Jarius Jackson was schooled by Steve McAdoo. Looks a lot like a McAdoo offense. A losing culture is hard to shake. We saw that with the Oilers. Chris Jones has done Matthew-itis, where he's smartest man in the room no matter what. We need to say Jay Milne back in safety because Purifoy was back in Saskatchewan for this game. And finally, need more Kevin Brown. Hampton Steve, at this point, it's become clear that hiring Jones as coach and GM is this organizational's biggest mistake since they hired Eric Tillman. And he destroyed by the team by trading Ricky Ray. Let's just hope Jones isn't that destructive in his final weeks in charge. Crick Sadaway, can the season even be saved? If no, then what are the Elks doing sitting forward at this point? JC, the Glazer, again, the Elks find a way to lose a very winnable game. The D is atrocious, like really bad. I thought that was the strength of Jones. His record here speaks for itself. Remember when we were starting a Trey Ford and actually winning football games? I get he's not a perfect player, but he wins. Chris Jones' ego is the biggest problem with this team. Sean, Chris Jones holding a piece of bread on each side of BD's ear and going, what are you? BD saying an idiot sandwich. That coming in from Sean. That's the a gif of Gordon Ramsay with Julie Chen, where they had a little thing. That's what that is right there. Let's go through the nasty chat. I don't know if you've seen any that you want to get to.
Yeah, Corey starts and stops with Jones. Record shows it. Head coach and DC numbers are brutal. Also, how does this affect the sale of the franchise? The price has to be dropping. Buyer is getting a loser.
Nah, they already knew they were getting a loser. They already knew that. No one was buying this team at this moment thinking that they were getting a winner. And I'll say this. If there was a single prospective owner that thought that they were getting a winner and this is going to change their mind, they probably didn't have the funds to buy this in the first place because they probably weren't smart enough to have the money to buy this football team. That, I don't think, is a problem at all.
Brett B says this is starting to become decade of darkness level of dysfunction. Good players on the team, but just shoot themselves in the foot every single turn.
Jeremy in SWP, looking on the bright side, the Elks are so bad. My wife asked if ESD had a post-game show because she was so mad, so here we are. Also brutal. Brett P., at some point, the man in charge has to be held accountable.
Well, it's praise report. Joaquin Gage in the nasty chat, he stating, I ran out of dogs tonight. Well, at least something worked. Gager. That's good to hear. We stopped by on our way out to say hi, but you were in the midst of some wieners. You had your hands full of wieners.
I want to see if I could quickly find stats of downfield passing. I don't think they do that now. I think they do that in the coming days. Yeah, I don't see any deep passing because I wanted to see McLeod Bethel Thompson's deep possessions, and I'm not seeing that right now. We'll get to the stats momentarily. This is the Green and Gold postgame show. Matt Iwanyk, Jay Milne with you here. You can jump in the nasty chat. You can jump in the Paris Jewelers inbox. Jim, Joan has to be fired, no doubt. The Elks were 0-9 to start the season. Now they're 0-5 this season, 0-14 in the start of 2 seasons. And that's the thing here with me is last year they got to 0-9. They fired the OC. They brought in Jarius Jackson, he took over as the OC, and they also brought in Trey Ford. You can't go to 0-9 again. So, look, if Chris Jones survives this week, what change can he make? Besides maybe a kicking change. Because you do got Dean Faithful in the practice roster.
Yeah. Petey's got to be out. That is inexcusable.
You could do that.
That is inexcusable. If for by the mercy of some higher power, Chris Jones is still the head coach this time tomorrow, yes, the team needs to be accountable. Petey, maybe not for the rest of the season, but certainly for now, you are not the kicker. You don't deserve to be on the field. You don't deserve to wear that jersey if you make an idiotic play like that. That's frustrating because, how do I say this without really sewering myself? Well, I'll just say, that is inexcusable. That is inexcusable. Your team, remember in the pregame, the kickoff show, I said, consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, when your offense goes down and puts together a drive and puts points on the board, well, defense, you come out and you stop them and you give the ball back to them. Or special teams, you do your job. They just came down and tied the game with 8 seconds left, and you have to keep the ball in bounds.
Because it's overtime then.
It's guaranteed.
It's overtime,
and then it's anybody's game. If they go to overtime and they lose,
well,
whatever.
I will say, going to overtime, the momentum was on the Elks side. Just scored 2 touchdowns.
100%.
I like the Elks' chances going into overtime in this one. They got lucky in a sense because of how poor it was getting into the end zone, but they ran the clock down where Ottawa didn't have enough time or shouldn't have had enough time to go in, and BD screwed that up. But is there any other, if Chris Jones, is there another change that you go to? Would you look at a quarterbacking change? Yeah. And I throw that out there just because, again, MBT's not the reason this team fully is 0-5. But he's also partly the reason why they don't have, he hasn't been a reason for them to get some wins. Is there a point where, do you have to even just straight up do the package? Because I know Chris Jones, it was reported this week that Chris Jones said he outright said Trey Ford said no to being part of packages. That's because Trey Ford doesn't want to be in gimmicks. Is it time to actually just create some packages where he's actually a starting quarterback and gets to actually be a quarterback, not some gimmicky quarterback for the Elks, for Trey Ford? Is that what you do? Or do you just look at potentially a full change at quarterback?
I think if Chris Jones is still there, you're not going to see the change.
Oh, you won't.
I think if Chris Jones is gone, then that's where the question lies.
The stubbornness of Chris Jones when it comes to Trey Ford might be his undoing of why he won't be the future GM and head coach of this team. And that goes back to that last offseason and not wanting to just stick with Trey Ford.
Yeah, I mean...
that's where it goes. And this season, I guess Chris Jones is kind of right on this, but they weren't doing anything offensively. And we saw on the broadcast early in the fourth quarter, we saw Trey Ford have his helmet on, look for a tablet. I'm a little surprised we didn't see Trey Ford go out there, even for a series. But I guess it worked out for Chris Jones because they did march down and get a couple of touchdowns with McLeod Bethel Thompson. But I'm at the point myself where it's just look, if you're going to drop to 0-6 potentially, I'd rather see it with Trey Ford than McLeod Bethel Thompson at this point.
Yes, 100%. And Colin O'Brien says it funny in the chat. The definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? I mean, it's clearly not happening. Call it whatever you want, but it's just not happening. It's not just, oh, that's bad football. Football gods aren't shining. No, they just don't have the ability to put it together and get it done and just win a damn game. It's just not in their DNA, and that's a problem. Where that stems from, nobody knows the answer to that. Nobody knows. If let's say Chris Jones is fired, are they gonna? And then they come out and win next week. Is that, is it Chris Jones? What if they come out and win one, lose one? You know what I mean? Like, it's just there's just something amiss here, and we've seen it before in other sports as well, where coaching change happens and boom.
You need that shakeup.
Something's shaken up, and the players in that locker room would be the ones looking themselves in the mirror saying, gosh darn, we cost this man his profession. And that sometimes shakes people up and wakes people up.
And players love Chris Jones. Players do love playing for Chris Jones. So for those players, that might be a real shakeup because they might sit there and go, this is a guy we really like.
Yes.
And we cost him his job.
Yeah, and that's tough pill to swallow.
Well, and then this is like bigger than most other coaches, I would think. Just because of how much you hear former players talking about how much they love.
Hey, how are you?
In the nasty chat, Captain, my captain says MBT's not why they were losing. It's the D and the special teams, which, look, the D is not good enough. And special teams, clearly today, messed up. But Brett B., he responds in the nasty chat saying MBT isn't the problem, but he's also not the solution. You have your options at your disposal, try them. And
that's what it's becoming now. Like, yes, he's not costing you games,
no,
but he certainly ain't going out and grabbing them.
It's at some point you just try something different to see what would happen.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not opposed to this idea, throwing Trey Ford out there against Ottawa. If he loses, you go back to MBT against Hamilton.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not opposed to it. Or if Trey Ford gets the win, then you stick with Trey Ford a little bit. Look, you want to give me the hockey goaltender 1A, 1B situation where a starting quarterback goes out. If you keep winning, you hold on to the job. The moment you lose, we'll go to the other guy if you have to. Maybe that fires MBT up a little bit. I'll say this about MBT. I said it before the season started. He is a quarterback that has been benched, I think, 3 or 4 times in his career, where he was designed the designate starting quarterback, didn't play well, was benched. And in some seasons, he's come back and taken over that starting role. Maybe that's what you look at here with Trey Ford. You throw him out there and see what you can do. To me, where this all stems from is the fact that, said the stat earlier, through 41 games in this second stint with the Edmonton Elks and Chris Jones, he's won 8 football games. 5 are with Trey Ford. And in the last 3 seasons, Trey Ford is by far the winningest quarterback of the Edmonton Elks. He's on your roster.
Okay.
Maybe you give him the shot.
What about this then, Matty? If Chris Jones doesn't get fired, he almost has to start Trey Ford. Is that right?
I would, if I'm him, that's the change I would try.
That he would have to, because if he's stuck with and was dug his heels in and continued this, MBT thing, and it's not like unfair to MBT. Yeah, hell yeah, super unfair to MBT. A lot of things that happened tonight he had nothing to do with. The defense and special teams absolutely let them down. You cannot win, and they almost won. Think of that. Their special teams and their defense, 2 of the 3 facets, stunk.
Well, can I go through, here's their drives of their offense, though, after they scored their 2 touchdowns of the game.
Yeah.
It was a punt, no first downs. 1 first down fumble. That's on Javon Leake, though. End of half, so that doesn't count. Punt, 1 first down. They got a field goal, 4 first down. Punt, 1 first down on that drive. A missed field goal, no first downs. They were given a great spot, and they couldn't get the 3 points. Now that's on Boris Beatty for not getting the 3 points, but they couldn't get a touchdown while being in great field position.
Yeah.
They started that drive at the Ottawa 24, and they couldn't even manage a first down on that. So they scored a touchdown early, and then their last 2 drives as an offense were touchdown.
Isn't
in
that
between
neat,
those,
that is something else.
1, 2, 3, 4 drives had 1 first down. 3 drives didn't even have a first down, and 1 drive they had 4 first down. They had 1 good drive in there that you can point to between their touchdowns, where offensively they were moving the ball and being productive. So we look at the touchdowns and we go, yeah, they played well in certain points, but a large chunk of this game, the offense actually really didn't do anything.
Well, like halfway through the second quarter, they were up 15-3.
Yep.
And somewhat in control. And, maybe now in hindsight, looking back at that, maybe that was a huge sign that they didn't keep the foot on the pedal.
They couldn't.
And just hammer down and run that up when Ottawa looked somewhat lifeless. And, hey, credits due where credits due. Drew Brown lit that team on fire. He 26-38 for 480 yards. Are you kidding me? That's a stat. 480 yards passing. And credits due to him. I mean that team played well. I thought the if you want to look at some positives, okay, because you have to at least try and find some positives. Well, I think the front seven in the run game did pretty darn good. I mean they only managed 46 yards rushing by their designated running backs on 17 attempts. That's pretty damn good.
Raquel Armstead came into this, on pace for over 1,000 yards this season. 275 yards.
Yeah,
he's been really good, and they held him to 40.
Yeah. And you look at this, you look at Ottawa's second down conversion rate, 15-25, where the Elks were only 10-21. That tells a lot right there. When you're not completing your second down or not converting on your second down attempts.
Russell Hirsch in the Nasty Chat says, starting forward unlocked Kevin Brown last year. Run game's non-existent right now. Admittedly, they're not giving Kevin Brown much of a chance. That's I've pointed to that through a few weeks here that last year, the couple of turning points of why Kevin Brown running changed and he started putting up the yards was Trey Ford came in and Jarius Jackson became the OC. Well, now I feel like it's not because of Jarius Jackson because he's still the OC and some of the credit goes to Trey Ford, but the flip side is what's Jarius Jackson doing here? Because there was success today on the run game. They in that first half, the success was there with Kevin Brown. And to go away from that makes absolutely no sense. So while I do agree partly on the fact that, yes, Trey Ford, I think, would help unlock Kevin Brown, you don't need Trey Ford to unlock Kevin Brown because we saw, at least
he's
not
already
tonight,
there.
It was there. All you had to do is give him the ball. And they chose not to do that. And that's the frustrating part with this team. And, you had it earlier that, Chris Jones, but also Jarius Jackson. Jarius Jackson has regressed, it seems, as an OC.
100%. 110%, Matty.
What we saw last year to this year is very different. And maybe this comes down to, I'm not saying MBT Trey Ford, maybe it's just the style of quarterback. Maybe because now he's got this pocket quarterback, he thinks that he needs to call a certain game for that pocket quarterback. Well, that's not working, dude. So adjust from it. Change from it. Do something different. And I know we said we might not get to it, but I'll still go to a QB draw. 1st and 10 with McLeod Bethel Thompson late in that football game.
Yeah, that was an interesting play call. Right?
And this isn't. I'm not trying to rip on McLeod Bethel Thompson. He's not exactly that mobile of a quarterback that I'm using in that moment, in that situation. You want to pull that out in the second quarter? Sure, maybe you could catch someone. It's the end of the game. You have 3 downs here. What are you wasting a play on McLeod Bethel Thompson QB draw?
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, what that coach's room looks like. Because obviously there's a lot of someone's influencing somebody in a large capacity here because Jarius Jackson could run an offense that spread the ball around quite successfully. So I don't know if it's more him or if it's Chris Jones or how that coach's room works. But it's just not good enough.
No.
The run game, I laughed at you because I took Kevin Brown over 44.5 yards.
Yeah, you were good.
In the first 5 minutes, he had 29 yards. And then, poof, gone into a mist was their run game. For what reason? Why?
I don't have an answer for
Why,
you.
Maddie?
I don't have an answer.
Tell me why.
I quickly want to go through the stats. Then we'll get to our 3 reasons the Edmonton Elks lost tonight. This is the Green and Gold postgame show. Iwanyk and Jay Milne with you here on Edmonton Sports Talk, your clear choice for Edmonton sports. Elks are now 0-5 on the season. MBT 26 of 35, 272 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're saying that you rushed the ball once for 9 yards. So they must not even credit that as a rush that QB draw, and they're crediting as a sack.
Yeah, probably.
Because he did not rush for 9 yards on that play, from what I recall. Kevin Brown, 8 carries, 35 yards. Javon Leake, 4 carries, 19 yards. But the most notable part of Javon Leake was he did have a fumble. Hergy Mayala, 7 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Eugene Lewis, 6 catches for 89 yards. And then there's a big drop-off. Gittins Jr., 4 catches for 29 yards. Javon Leake, 2 catches for 21 yards. Dylan Mitchell, he only was targeted 4 times. He only had 2 catches for 17 yards. Anderson led the way with tackles at 9. He also had a quarterback sack in there. Only once were they able to get to Drew Brown tonight. Jackson did have an interception on what was a horrendous throw from Drew Brown, but the Edmonton Elks aren't able to capitalize. They don't get a first down, so they can't punch it in the end zone. And Boris Beatty misses the field goal to start the fourth quarter. For the Ottawa Redblacks, Drew Brown, 26 of 38, 480 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He also rushed the ball 3 times for 6 yards and a touchdown. Armstead, 14 carries for 40 yards. He also added 4 catches for 31 yards. 3 receivers for the Ottawa Redblacks with over 100 yards today. Dominic Rhymes, 7 catches for 131 yards. Of course, this is the week I bench him in fantasy. Last 2 weeks, he puts up a combined less than 10 yards. Today, he puts up 131. Justin Hardy, 5 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. Lucan of Redford Rangers happy about that one. Pimpleton, 4 catches, 153 yards and a touchdown, including a 70-yarder. Look at the longest for these 3 receivers. Dominic Rhymes, longest today, 66. Justin Hardy, 68. Pimpleton, a 70-yarder.
That's
giving up some big plays.
Pretty impressive.
How does that feel as a secondary? Defensively, 4 guys. Picton, Santos, Knox, Lamont, and Harris with defensive tackles. Pickett, my apologies. Santos, Knox, 2 sacks. Wakefield with a sack. And then kicking-wise, Boris Beatty, 1 of 2, missing a very crucial one, though. 3 singles, but on top of that, an awful kickoff that gave the Ottawa Redblacks a chance to win this game in regulation, which they did. Stamphader, though, adding to get mad at Beatty all you want. That was a coaching decision to not let him just boom it. He could put that into the end zone easily.
I don't think that was a coaching decision.
Well, to not boom it deep?
I think the coaching decision was to squib it.
So, and then that's maybe the issue there. Why are you telling him to squib that? Why aren't you telling him to kick that deep and try to get the single?
Because the clock starts, and you might get an up back to pick up the ball instead of one of your returners.
Or maybe you could get a single.
Nobody's getting a single on a kickoff.
They did today, but they was kicking the other way.
I don't know.
Although there was a wind. They did get a single. At the very least, the coach, he's Boris Beatty. He shouldn't have to be told that. Make sure that ball doesn't go out of bounds.
It's unacceptable.
So Boris Beatty is clearly the number 1 reason they lose today's game.
You'd have to say that. You'd have to. If you didn't, then you just...
What's the second biggest reason the Edmonton Elks lost?
Awful offensive play calling.
So we're going to go Jarius Jackson.
That would be his name.
And then third, I'm just going Elk secondary.
Yeah. It was a tough day at the office for them.
You have a receiver who had a 66-yard catch. You had a receiver with a 68-yard catch. You had a receiver with a 70-yard catch.
That's a tough look.
You shouldn't have any of them. But really, if you have one of those in a game, you go, oh, that's a little rough.
That's hard to do.
You had 3 of those in a single game. I would have to give the Elks special teams. And look, I'm not putting Chris Jones in there, but Chris Jones is ultimately the architect and the head of this team. And it just hasn't been good enough. And I don't know how you could continue with Chris Jones in charge of this football team. And that's how we began this show earlier. But just to get back to that, I really, even just going to your fans, I don't know how you go to your fans and say, we're going to run this as is. We're not making a change to something. Because you're not changing the offensive coordinator. Maybe Jarius Jackson, or maybe Jason Shivers gets let go. Maybe Chris Jones takes over the defense. Maybe they go, defense isn't good enough. I need to take over defense again.
Yeah.
Maybe he takes over defensive play calling duties or something. That's not going to satisfy the fan base, though.
No, you know what's going to satisfy? And then, H.E. Pennypackers in the Paris Jewelers inbox. Chris Jones needs to be fired. Season ticket holder, and I'm tired of watching all the mental mistakes. At some point, that has to fall on the coach. Every week, it's a new way to lose. If anyone else performed like this at their job, they would be fired. So, what do you do? What do you and just so you know, there is a lot of blame Dusty hashtags
I didn't want to go there.
in the
I haven't said that.
in the nasty chat. There was
I'll
something
leave that.
that was said.
EST Classic, people will know.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'll say. Next year, get to the EST Classic. Maybe you'll have a moment like that.
Maybe he should have to wear a Boris Beattie jersey. Someone suggested. That would be fun.
Damn, somebody would have to make one. I don't think anyone wants to make one of those
But
right
I
now.
think to satisfy this fan base, because you're really, if nothing happens, you're gonna lose even more.
Yeah.
If you
well,
can, if you can
18,000 fans announced for that game today.
There's 18,000.
Well, they announced.
Okay.
Here's the thing I would say. So, like, let's say you don't change Chris Jones. What does this team have to do to get to win those fans back and feel like this team could salvage this season?
Put Trey Ford in.
Is that the only thing? Not
Yep.
500?
Nope. If it's clear to me now that if Elks fans have Trey Ford in and they're still losing, well, what's different than right now? They're not winning.
But
right
is that
now anyway.
salvaging a season? Like, that's the thing. Like,
You said fan base. We're not talking about numbers. We're not talking about winning a
Okay.
season. I'm
you don't
talking
think
about
that if
fans.
if Chris Jones stays and they go and they rattle off, and I have them back to these type of things, 5 straight, and they get to 500, he could win the fan base back that way?
I guess anything's possible, but it's pretty clear that what the fans want, what the 18,000 people that were chanting, "We want Trey, we want Trey," give them what they want now. You really don't have.
Lionel Messi's crying. I think he got another injury, so he's out of the Copa America final.
What do you mean? You get 2 injuries and you're out?
Well, no, he didn't get subbed the first time he kept playing. He played through it. Must have.
I don't
got
get
worse.
that rule. Like, what do you mean?
Well, they attended to him, but he didn't get substituted out of the game, so he was allowed to keep playing. It's like he has to come off the field for a few minutes, and then he could come back on.
This soccer game.
But
is
now
so
he
fun.
got subbed, so
Okay,
he's
so-
crying pretty good there.
Okay. Yeah.
So Trey, well, we're getting Brad put Trey Ford in. That's immediately coming in. Like and that's not going to happen. I'll say that right now. That is not going to happen if Chris Jones is the head coach of this football team. No way, shape, or form are we going to see that on Friday. Lucas back in. Curious on how Trey Ford will help the defense. It's not about that. They're 0-5. It's about if you're going to keep losing football games, at least entertain the fan base.
Well, and that's where it's at now, because this has went to just become a dumpster fire pretty fast. So now it's time to protect your only thing that you have going for you, which is your fans.
Yeah, and on top of that, I will say this too, like with MBT, one thing about Michael Riley when he was here in Edmonton, he was a killer. They get that ball in the fourth quarter, you knew they were winning the football game. You knew they were driving, they're winning that football game.
That's an attitude.
You knew they
right?
were going to get that. He had brought that swagger, and with at least, I'm not saying Trey Ford has this at all. Michael Riley actually inspired his defense to also have it. Like he had that special personality that like transcend the entire team. That he was somehow leading the defense when he wasn't even out there on the field for that. But you have those quarterbacks that go. Bo Levi Mitchell was known. You knew if he got that ball, he's going down. They're winning that football game. And we could point to MBT today saying he got the ball, he went down, and he did tie it. But this season, he hasn't gone down and won them that football game. He hasn't gone down and got that victory. So if your quarterback that you're spending $400,000 on isn't winning games for you, and yes, the defense is poor, and yes, the special teams is poor, why not just go for the entertainment route? And go and see what Trey Ford can do with his legs and what he could do overall. And in the end, maybe he could go win you a football game because his history says with Chris Jones and Jarius Jackson, he actually could win football games because he's done it 5 times.
Yeah.
More than any other quarterback under Chris Jones since 2022.
Yeah, I just think that, now is really that's all you could do is give the fans what they want. And this is not from a Chris Jones. This is organizational.
This is now where business has to be involved with,
Yes.
with the football. I hate doing that. Business should almost never be involved with sport. But this franchise is in such a dire spot that now it has to be involved with that a little bit. But I'll say this. You don't need Trey Ford starting on Friday to give fans a little bit of acceptance in where this team is. If you give them Chris Jones, I think they can live with that to start. They'll sit there and say, also put in Trey Ford, but they'll be happy Chris Jones is no longer part of this organization.
Yes.
And that's the thing that we will have to wait and see if that's coming. If that's coming, that's tomorrow.
Yes,
that's not a Tuesday issue.
No, it's
that's tomorrow. Heck, maybe there's going to be an announcement later tonight.
It could even be tonight.
Like, that's the thing. You might have the press conference coming tomorrow. Rick Lawlisher went and let him go because it's a short week. We have till tomorrow. And otherwise, this is still going to be Chris Jones. But beyond that, it's got to be Trey Ford. And I don't even think there's a short lease for next week.
You think it's done?
No. Like
it's just a matter of if it's now or then.
I think it's MBT and Trey Ford if Chris Jones is coaching.
Gotcha.
I don't even think MBT has a short lease next week as much as he maybe should. That if he has a bad first quarter, let's say the offense doesn't do anything in the first quarter, that Trey Ford would go in.
Yeah.
I think it's MBT throughout the entire game, no matter what.
And
that's going to be the downfall of Chris Jones here.
You know what's not? It's definitely not funny, but you know what's interesting is when that play happened.
Which
when
one?
Boris Beatty kicked the ball out of bounds with 8 seconds left. The play. And they got the ball on the 45-yard line.
Yeah.
That feeling that I had in the pit of my stomach was like, they're going to get this done. You know, like, you were saying about Michael Riley and how you knew that that guy had the cojones to get it done. Well, I also knew that defense didn't have a hope in hell on that play. And I'd imagine a lot of fans would say the same thing. That they were going to complete a 25 to 30-yard passing play, get down, kick a field goal with zeros on the clock.
29-yard passing play.
29-yard. I said that to you right before that play. I said all they need is a 30-yard play, and it's in. And that's it's exactly what they did. So
how do you allow a 29-yard reception at that moment?
That's a great question.
Like, how do you give up 29 yards on a single play when you just need one stop? And then all they have at that, like, if you get an incompletion, all they have left is either to try to get the Rouge by punting it as hard as they can or kicking it as hard as they can or throwing a Hail Mary.
Yeah, and hoping for a penalty.
Hoping for something, hoping for some miraculous play. You just have to make one stop in that moment. And this entire season, this defense, when they need a stop, when you want that stop from them, they haven't delivered at all.
No, they haven't rose to the occasion.
No.
That's a classic example there tonight. And the fan that's been watching this team all year, I guarantee you had the same feeling in the pit of their stomach as I did. This is they're going to complete this, and they're going to kick a game-winning field goal. If you could even believe that.
Winnipeg Sports Talk, Remo in the nasty chat. Hey, Remo. They still had to play defense and prevent a 30-yard pass. That's the thing. So look, Boris Beatty can't have that, but you just need one play. The defense needs to step up one time, and you're going overtime, likely.
Once.
You're going up, and they couldn't get that done. And this entire team, it's a disaster. And it's wild to think, like, the offense isn't bad, but it's not great. The defense is bad. Special teams has been is there
inconsistent.
Something? Yeah, okay, that's the word. Because it's the returns, at least, they're there. But Boris Beatty has not been good enough this season in any way, shape, or form. And that goes beyond before today.
But you can even look at I know we talked about it earlier, but that fumble by Javon Leake.
Yes.
A minute and a half left before halftime.
He's hurting this team on offense.
Yes.
That's where he's he's dropped it a little bit, but on a couple punt returns, but he's always recovered it. The two big fumbles that have been turning points in this season at times in games has been him and a running back, and he's fumbled the football.
Yeah, I showed you a text from a friend of ours in the game, right? That said the Elks are going to find a way. They're going to find a way to lose this. I said, stop it. Don't do this. And sure enough, they do.
Remus also saying he's pumped that he went 3-1 in our pool this week.
Did he? I think I went 2-2.
I actually this week picked the Elks. For the first time all year, I've gone against them. I picked them to cover.
And
they couldn't even 3.5.
They covered.
They lost.
But they covered.
They were the favorites.
Oh, they were the favorites, right? Oh, sorry.
Wheels. Boys, I'm so upset. This is 0-5. I was going to come see you at the casino, but I'm so mad. I'll see you next game. Chris Jones has to go. We will be Century Casino Sports Bar and Lounge 4 o'clock on Friday, as we will have the kickoff show for here when the Elks take on the Redblacks. Tommy also saying Tommy's in the nasty chat that Elks ownership coming, new owner coming very soon. When it does come to, I will go with what Murray said. Was it this week or the week prior on the Hangout? Murray McCourt, that it's dotting I's, crossing T's, and as Tommy needs to say, also dotting the lowercase J's. Don't forget about those.
Never forget about them.
It's done, basically. It'll be a singular owner, and we're just waiting for that to now be announced and get fully
Edmonton's
finished.
worst-kept secret.
But we will see when it comes and what happens. I'll be intrigued by a singular owner. But that might also be a reason why you don't change Chris Jones, is because if you know this is going to be done, if you know that in 2 or 3 weeks, person X is coming in as the new owner, you go taking it. But I'll say this. I'll go right now what we need tomorrow, I want from this Elks organization. Rick Lawlisher needs to, I don't care whether it's a statement, I don't care whether it's a tweet, I don't care if he calls a press conference. One way or another, he needs to say whether Chris Jones is the guy for this team right now or not. He needs to come out tomorrow and either fire this guy, or he needs to come out and say that they, whatever the reasons. I mean, make it up. I don't care if you want to say, only lost by a field goal for the last 4 games. This team, I don't care whatever he has to say. Maybe he can't say the full truth behind it. But he's now got to come out to me and actually defend why Chris Jones then is not being let go.
I disagree.
Or he's got to come out and let him go.
If he comes out in person, in public, and has a press conference, he has got to relieve Chris Jones of his head coaching duties.
Okay.
He cannot come out and say, we believe in him.
Well, then
we've got his
get
back.
me some sort of statement.
No.
Get me some sort
only
of
statement is he's out.
I don't. Maybe it's not.
Then you don't say anything.
Get it to someone else. I don't care. Leak it to the Morley Scott and Dave Campbell from Ched saying Chris Jones' job is safe.
Right.
And explain why. Sources close to the Edmonton Elks say Chris Jones' job is safe.
How can it be safe?
Well, he's not getting fired. But they have to give. I want some reason.
You want something.
Maybe that in the end, I just want something.
Yeah, you want
Give
something.
me something.
Give me something.
Do not let me, at least if I get something that they come out and they say Chris Jones, again, it's a report from Dave Naylor. Again, I don't care where it comes from, but it says Chris Jones is staying as head coach of this franchise for whatever reason. It tells me they understand that people are upset, that people want Chris Jones' job, that they see that this is dire, and they're trying to salvage it in some way. They're trying to send a message to their fan base.
Yep.
To come out and just let this week be normal, I won't accept that.
I get what you're saying.
Just say something.
I just think the only thing that can be said is what everybody wants now. And
sure.
You're talking about protecting what little you have left as those diehard, faithful Edmonton fans, and protecting that, then you have to give them what they want.
Well, and again, that's where give me the report then. Give me some sort of report that's saying his job is safe for now. And X, I want to see if I could quickly find.
I'll just read a couple in the Paris Schuler's inbox. Donnie M, can we win a game giving up 400 yards on our defense? His boys, Purifoy, etc., were not good today. Hydro, hi boys, listening to the pre and post on iHeart through the iPhone connected to the USB port on stereo in the tractor. Day 2 of a 2-week holiday on the farm, AC and radio working with a couple tasty bevies in the cooler. Man, that looks like nice hay you got there, Hydro. Where are you from? Where is that? That's actually everybody's hay fields are looking outstanding.
Are they?
Well, and the timing was right because it was that hot week. So most people cut and bailed in 2 days later because it was so dry. Everything dried.
Steve in the nasty chat, aren't they hamstrung by the coaching cap, Matty? No matter what, they will be. Even if you wait till the end of the season to make a coaching change, they will owe Chris Jones money next year. So I'm sorry, just get rid of him. Give the fans what they want then. If you're going to be moving on from him, which I don't know how right now, it would take a lot for him to save his job this season. Maybe Trey Ford saves his job like he did last year. But I'm not expecting that. I did find a tweet from Farhan Lalji. Cam Cole, longtime scribe in Edmonton and Vancouver, now retired, He has a quote tweet of something with Farhan, but saying it's unfathomable that Jones still has a job. The Elks organization is just that pathetic. Farhan saying there's no one even remotely qualified in the building to take over on an interim basis, which in itself is an issue. The coach's cap this past offseason and the pending ownership change currently is also keeping him employed. I'll just throw this out there. Bring me Kahari Jones. We want to see what this offense could do. I want to get a little bit of excitement on the offense. Give me Kahari Jones on an interim basis. Go convince him to be an intern for the season.
Bring me bring me a warm body.
It doesn't have to be in-house. It doesn't have to be.
No.
There are qualified people out of house right now that I think you can go get, and I would start with Kahari Jones.
The only thing, though, is, Matty, if you're going out of house, it's not like right now. It's gonna be after the season. You're almost handcuffed to put somebody in the role that's already been in the organization, that already has playbooks, because you know, especially going into this short week, you can't just go in there and create new offenses and
it's going to take time to fully bring that in, but that's where with Kahari Jones, that's why you'd make that change next Saturday. Week and a half, it's going to take time, and also I don't care if it takes a while to get a new playbook fully in. They're already losing anyways, so who cares? Chris Jones, the fans do not want this anymore. The fans are done with this, so they need to get things. You got to give them something at some point here.
Jimmy Onishi, Jay Milne for head coach as long as he plays straightforward. You got it, Jimmy. I would do that. I would do that immediately. And there's not one of these. Somebody said there's tons of coaches on the TSN panel. Yeah, they're there for a reason. Keep them there, please.
But that's it. Paul LaPolice has proven that he's not a head coach in the Canadian Football League. He's a great offensive coordinator. Not Kahari Jones ultimately got fired with Montreal, but he also had a really good year, and he has never got a second chance as a head coach. That's where I would give him potentially that shot. He's the name that's out there for me. There is no other coach on the. It's Jim Barker's the other guy. That'd be a GM, not a head coach.
Yeah,
you're not bringing him as a coach.
Yeah, that was the one that got away, Mr. Iwanyk.
Which one?
Today. That game.
Donnie M saying, what about Ed Hervey, GM? He's the GM of Hamilton Tiger Cats. He's not. He was just given that job, so I don't think so. Today's, we could say they let a lot away, but this is the one where there's no more excuses.
Nope.
There's no more. You lost to the Ottawa Redblacks.
You are
we
you are.
Can't say that there's 5 great teams in the CFL and the Elks are just losing to the best of them. You could say that for the first few. Now you lost at home again.
Yeah.
You lost at home again. So I honestly don't know where this franchise goes this week. What would you do if you're Rick Lawlisher? I don't think we got your. How would you deal with this week?
Chris Jones will be meeting with him right now, telling him he's relieved of his head coaching and GM duties. Right now.
That's what you would do?
Tonight.
Yeah.
Press conference first thing tomorrow morning. 100%. Something's got to give, Matty. And unfortunately, do I think Chris Jones is the worst coach? No. Something's got to give.
Do you know what this is?
I'm sorry.
And I'm not trying to put them in the same category in terms of coaching. But at one point, Bill Belichick, GM, failed Bill Belichick, the head coach. And a change was necessary with New England. GM Chris Jones is failing head coach Chris Jones mightily. And head coach Chris Jones is going to have to pay that price, along with GM Chris Jones.
Well, yeah, maybe he bit off more than he could chew, and ultimately it will cost him his job. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking here, we're having a candid conversation. You know what, Boris Beatty, you blew it today, but he's still a professional athlete. I don't know, these guys still have real lives. It is tough to see a guy, a head coach, or any player get lambasted for what they do on the field, but unfortunately that's what you signed up for. That's what you're getting paid to deal with, good and bad. So Chris Jones, you don't wish anybody to ever lose their job, but this is professional sports, and real decisions have to happen in professional sports, just like they do in the workplace and in the real world. So that would be what I do immediately.
Sheldon S. I feel like Peyton Manning. Here we are talking about our stupid kicker.
Vanderjagt. Remember that?
Yep, that's a great quote. That is a great quote there. Any other final thoughts for you?
No, I'm just upset. I'm sad. I'm sad for all these fans, like that have been here and hanging on and it's been through, a lot of lows lately.
Yeah.
And here was, we certainly thought this was a game that they could get. Game.
And it was there.
It was available.
It was there.
It was available.
It was 15-3.
It was there, but once again, this beautiful, lovely team finds new ways, if you could believe that, a totally new way to lose. So this is problematic. Hang in there. Brighter days are obviously coming because it can't get much worse than this.
A lot more coverage on this loss, I'm sure, tomorrow. It starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. The Nielsen Show, Dusty, who called the game, Lieutenant Eric and Trev, who were at the game. I saw Trev in the nasty chat a bit earlier. What did he say, if I could quickly find it? That sucked. So we have that on the morning show. 9 o'clock, it is the ESD Hangout. Myself, Tom Gazzola, who's in the nasty chat right now, he was at the game, and Zach Tecum will be on the Hangout tomorrow. The three of us, we will talk a lot of the Edmonton Elks tomorrow as well, and we'll stay tuned. There might be something that we'll have to shift to and deal with. We'll have to keep our...
I sincerely hope so, because this something's got to give.
I also could see that, again, I put it at a 75% chance it doesn't happen just because of the short week. And a 25% chance something does happen. It is a short week. They are the first game of next week, Week 7. The Edmonton Elks will meet the Ottawa Redblacks out in Ottawa. That is a doubleheader on the Friday. This is a rare summer week where there's no Thursday nighter. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which I wonder why it's not a Thursday, because it's almost also MLB All-Star weekend. Week. Right. And so, you're just giving away a Thursday.
Must have been something with the scheduling.
Yeah. But that means the Elks take on the Redblacks 5 o'clock out in Ottawa, which means the Green and Gold kickoff show with myself and Jay Milne. Live right here at Century Casino Sports Bar and Lounge will be on the air at 4 o'clock. Come join us for the pregame. Join us for the game. Join us for the postgame. The game day special is the cheese and jalapeno smoky. The Friday daily special, I believe, is quesadillas.
Ooh, today's
daily special is the surf and turf, and I was very happy with it. $11.99, you can't go wrong with that. It was wonderful.
Value.
It was delicious. It was amazing. Amazing daily specials all week right here at Century Casino Sports Bar and Lounge, just off of Fort Road, where every day is game day. We will be here next Friday for that, Jay and myself. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to the Green and Gold post-game show on this Sunday night. The Edmonton Elks, they fall to the Ottawa Redblacks 37-34. They drop to 0-5 on the season. A lot of disappointment. Thank you to everyone for tuning in here on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Tune in iHeartRadio as well as on YouTube. Was that a specific?
No, they're in bed.
Oh, okay.
That was just me saying
that. Was just
Bye-bye.
You doing that? Okay. Inside comment there.
Sometimes do this. My daughters will text me and say, "Dad, we're watching. Can you give us the secret? This is the secret."
I learned that yesterday, so that's why when you were doing that, I was like, "Oh, is this the secret?" Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to everyone for texting in and for jumping in to the nasty chat. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, and I will chat with you tomorrow on the Hangout. Have a great night. Bye for now.